So today I'm going to be discussing a paper which discusses the possibility or impossibility of reforming ISKCON and getting ISKCON back to the original standards that were made by the founder, Srila Prabhupada. So I'm reading from a paper, and this is the part 3 of the paper. Guilty or Not Guilty is the title of this chapter of this paper. I'm not going to give the name of the author of this paper at the present time because I don't want to implicate this person in Pod's, analysis at the present time. But anyway, it's a good paper. So he starts out, the deception of possible reform. Since all of the deviant leaders are guilty of offenses, they cannot sincerely advocate reform because it immediately implicates them in the crime of unauthorized control and of being guilty of direct disobedience to Srila Prabhupada's instructions. Due to the insanity caused by these offenses, they cannot acknowledge their deviations or accept the consequences. So my comment, correct, the GBC as a group has orchestrated mass banning of thousands of devotees, some beatings, mass molesting of children, and some devotees were beaten up, and some devotees were sued for not following the GBC at great expense to ISKCON, and some devotees were terminated by GBC hitmen or gundas who got rid of the offenders who were challenging that these GBC leaders are gurus. So a lot of this is criminal. So they're not going to admit that we committed a crime, we defrauded the society by taking over the assets, we orchestrated beatings and molesting and maybe murders. So various devotees keep asking me, when is the GBC going to acknowledge the problems that they've caused for so many Vaishnavas and massive problems that they've created for the whole institution of ISKCON? When will they admit that? When will they agree to that? When will they start to rectify that? Well, don't hold your breath, because this, I believe, has been a criminal takeover. And if people were banned and beaten and molested and sued and taken out permanently, then these are basically crimes, and I don't expect anyone to admit, yeah, we committed a bunch of crimes. Why would they do that? Or really, we orchestrated a bunch of crimes. Now, a lot of times the GBC people will say, well, we didn't molest anyone personally. Well, maybe, maybe not, but you had a whole infrastructure in place where a whole lot of people were getting molested. So it's like Charlie Manson. Charlie Manson says he didn't hurt anybody personally. Well, okay. But what about all kinds of people who were hurt due to Charlie Manson? So going on with this paper, the unauthorized, unqualified leaders have at times faked a willingness to discuss the realignment and reunification of the institution back to His Divine Grace's instructions. However, no serious consideration of a reform will ever be made by these deviants, only further deception. Okay, my comment, wow, there's a real vote of confidence in the GBC. There are a bunch of deviants who are beyond reform. They can't be reformed. And any attempt they make at reform is just another smokescreen of deception. And a real reform is not going to take place with these people. So, for example, Badri Narayan is a big GBC leader. He recently said he does not have the bandwidth to hear more complaints. He's tired of hearing complaints. Okay, no more bandwidth for complaints. Okay, they're pretty much just ignoring complaints as much as possible. And that has been the policy all along. In the Mafia, it is called the Code of Silence. Say nothing, do nothing, avoid complainers, admit to nothing. and don't speak to anyone outside the circle of collaborators. So the GBC had their own mail system called the PAMHO network, and this was all an internal messaging process so they could communicate amongst themselves. As soon as somebody like me writes to the PAMHO network, my message comes back saying, your message is not approved for this system, or, it was bounced back. So my message doesn't get through to any of these people. Then later on, they say, well, we didn't know there was a problem with the molesting. Well, okay, you don't know anything because you're bouncing back our messages. We're trying to inform you what's going on in the society. You are bouncing back our messages. How are you going to be informed about what's going on? Okay, getting back to the article. No matter how much scriptural and authoritative evidence is presented, it will never induce the deviates to adhere to His divine grace's instructions. Well, yeah, I mean, they're saying that acharyas are falling down, acharyas are having illicit sex with men, women, and children, acharyas are voted in, voted out, suspended, and excommunicated for deviations. Where is any of that stated in Prabhupada's writings? It's not. They just concocted all this stuff wholesale. Okay, getting back to the article, since the offenses cannot be corrected due to legal, immoral, and criminal maneuvering, the possibility of restructuring the institution back to the original format has been made impossible. Pretty much. At the same time, a lot of them are getting old, getting sick, getting fried, getting tired, getting worn out. They're resigning. They're GBC emeritus. They're not active GBC at the moment because, they're tired of dealing with the issues, and they just frankly can't deal with the issues. And someone said it looks like a bunch of old retired zombies now at the GBC meeting. So they're having a GBC meeting. They're trying to decide how the succession will go on. The succession of illicit sex with men, women, and children Acharya program. How will that be going on in the future? Well, I don't know. First of all, you have to declare that acharyas are not engaged in illicit sex with men, women, and children. Otherwise, you're going to continue just having acharyas who are falling down and having problems. You're not going to fix the issue. The issue is Krishna's pure devotee a deviant at any point? Was he? Could he have been? No, that's not what's going on with Prabhupada's instructions. He has never said that acharyas are deviating, and he says, if you say acharyas are deviating, then that is a very severe offense. But no one's allowed to go into the GBC meeting and explain what is an actual bona fide acharya. So I started to have a really crazy conversation with a GBC follower, and he was saying you need a living person to take you back to Godhead. Okay, well, back to Godhead, that's the Vaikuntha planets, the spiritual planets of Krishna, and all that stuff. So that's very advanced situation we're talking about here. How are we going to get back to Krishna Loka if the living person we're following has not even understood the basic ABC points of the religion? We're talking about Vaikuntha and Krishna Loka when we haven't even understood basic points. What is a follower of Krishna? What are the basic tenets that need to be followed? Now, one thing is, in ancient times, it took a long time for yogis to realize the supersoul. The supersoul is accompanying the individual soul. So the supersoul is with us. And first of all, they have to realize the supersoul. That was the original purpose of yoga in ancient times. Okay, and the GBC living guys, they're going to Reno to gamble, they're having illicit sex with men, women, and children, they're drinking vodka, and, they're falling down in so many ways. Why would they take the supersoul to Reno to gamble? And why would they take the supersoul to a porno show? So, the supersoul is going with you wherever you go, right? Okay. So where am I going to go? I'm going to go to the porno show. I'm going to go to Reno. Well, that means you have not understood the even basic principle that the supersoul accompanies the individual soul. So you haven't even come to the preliminary stage of yoga understanding, and you're going to take me or somebody else to Krishna Loka. That seems very doubtful. That's very doubtful. So there's stages of progression that we have to go through to get to Krishna Loka. And the first stage is we have to realize the localized aspect of Krishna. That Krishna is a super soul residing within the heart of all living beings, including our heart. Therefore, I'm not going to be going to the porno show. I'm not going to be gambling in Reno, because that means I'm taking Krishna to Reno. Why would I do that? So they haven't understood any of the basic points and principles of the religion, and they're going to take me or someone else to Krishna Loka? I don't think so. So it's very misleading what they are doing. So another person said the GBC is like the Titanic. It hit the iceberg in 1978, and it's just sinking more and more every day. But yeah, they're very worried about their legacy and how everything's going to carry on. Well, from the looks of it, you're just handing everything over to the Hindus. You're putting Hindus as signers on the temple property and making them the legal managers of ISKCON. So it looks to us like the legacy is the GBC just wants to hand ISKCON off to a Hindu program. Okay, getting back to the article, the reputation of the institution is wholly contaminated in the minds of both sincere devotees of the movement and the human society overall. Okay, that's true. The reputation of ISKCON has been in the tank, on the rocks, since the early 1980s. I don't see how the leaders could not have known that was happening. And there are people who are saying the leaders wanted that. The leaders wanted to drive ISKCON into the sewer because, you know, they're not devotees. These leaders are rascals, and they just do obnoxious things knowing that it will reflect on ISKCON and make Krishna look bad and Prabhupada look bad and all the rest of it. And that makes all devotees look bad. So then, you know, the devotees have a much harder time trying to preach in this atmosphere where so much bad publicity is just churning out, and just being generated left, right, and center on a regular basis by the leaders. And even recently, we got the Lokanath problem. Oh, Lokanath is a molester. He touched an 11-year-old girl. I know this person personally. He's still the guru. Well, how does that reflect on the society? You have a person who obviously has some kind of sexual deviant propensities, and he's the sum total of the demigods, and he's Krishna's successor. That means you don't care about the reputation of the movement. Okay, getting back to the article in C.C. Antya Leela Chapter 2, it is stated that if a sannyasi or administrator has illicit connections with women, he brings disrepute upon his religious institution. Well, duh. Okay. Now they're just arguing that it is common for acharyas to fall down. They just switched the whole thing around now. Well, yeah, our acharyas are falling down, but acharyas fall down. What's the problem? He's Krishna's successor. He's assisting the gopis. He's a pure devotee. And he's falling down left, right, and center into all kinds of problems. So they're just degrading the post of Krishna's successor. So can this be reformed? Well, not easily. I mean, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, how can we reform the Sahajas? It's almost impossible. So the Sahajas believe that conditioned souls and pure devotees are behaving the same way. So how can this be remedied? Not easily. So they basically made ISKCON into a Sahaja camp. You know, impure people are being worshipped as pure people. This is exactly what's done in the Sahaja groups. Getting back to the article, in the next chapter, the results of offending a Vaishnava or the spiritual master may be forgiven by the Vaishnava due to his tolerant nature, but Krishna will not tolerate such offenses. Srila Prabhupada states in chapter 3, text 213, that if a devotee properly executing his devotional service becomes an offender at the lotus feet of his spiritual master or a Vaishnava, his devotional service is spoiled. It is also stated in the same purport that Krishna cannot tolerate any insult or blasphemy against a Vaishnava. Okay, so what happens when you're just saying all day, every day, that acharyas are falling down into illicit sex with men, women, and children? It's the most disrespectful thing imaginable that you can say about God and God's pure devotees. And Prabhupada told us when we were in India that if you glare at a Vaishnava, you have to take future birth as a vulture. And where you'll be sitting and glaring all day long, wow, what to speak of all the banning, beating, molesting, sexual exploiting, robbing devotees' life savings, kicking devotees out on the street without a penny, not giving devotee mothers proper diapers, baby food, and so on for their babies, and the list is endless. So offending a Vaishnava is on different levels, but of course just blaspheming a Vaishnava is bad. But it goes way beyond that with the GBC program, ISKCON leaders. Devotees are being banned, beaten, molested, sued, and assassinated. They go way into the physical level of offenses, which is way worse, millions of times worse than just, glaring at a Vaishnava or saying bad things about a Vaishnava. They're performing bad actions on devotees. So it's all being multiplied many, many, many times, their offenses. And we believe that is why Prabhupada says false gurus go to the most obnoxious regions, because they will be held accountable for all these activities. I mean, just Sulochan alone, one person being terminated. They're all responsible for that because they were all encouraging Kirtananda and they were oppressing Sulochan. So that caused his departure, untimely departure, and they're responsible for that. So false gurus go to the most obnoxious regions of the universe for a reason. And this is the reason. They're very offensive on every level, to other Vaishnavas. Okay, getting back to the article, this combination of offenses and insults are regular occurrences within the institution. Therefore, there is no doubt the institution is condemned. If a devotee stays in such association and does not protest on behalf of the spiritual master, he becomes implicated in the offenses. Thus, the ruination of the institution caused by the actions and mentality of its leaders will also take in those associating within that institution. Yes, that's correct. So there's a lot of collective karma for associating with these offenders and supporting them and so on and so forth. And one of the reactions seems to be that many devotees, many devotees are getting cancer and other terminal illnesses, and they're departing untimely. So we believe it is because they have been entangled in these offenses in different ways, and it's affecting them and making their bodies into a toxic condition, which results in fatal ailments. So yes, you can't participate, just like the Kauravas who participated in insulting Draupadi were all condemned by Krishna, because you're not allowed to participate in making offenses. Any devotee that does not want his devotional service spoiled must leave the institution immediately, since it's proven that the leaders will never reform, and all of those that do not defend Srila Prabhupada's instructions as the truly authorities will be considered complicit. We have confirmed evidence of offenses committed by the empowered works of such committed devotees as Paranjan Das, proof of perversion, sodomy, and child and woman abuse, financial fraud, and misappropriation, Vaishnava offenses of many varieties, including murder, etc. Nityananda Das, proof of premeditated murder of the spiritual master by poisoning. Krishnakant Das, proof of repeated and sustained deviation from standing instructions and philosophical deviations from Vaishnava philosophy by numerous leaders, gurus that exercise unjustified authority against Vaishnavas. This partial list of serious offenses and insults committed upon Srila Prabhupada is of the worst possible level and will inevitably cause the destruction of nearly the entire institution, co-offenders, and collaborators alike. The only safe position is to sincerely surrender to Srila Prabhupada and be initiated by him to hopefully get relief from such serious offenses, insults, and association. Even the chanting of the holy name is not an alternative. The holy name is Krishna, and he is firmly the defender of Srila Prabhupada on this issue, as are all of Srila Prabhupada's sincere disciples. Since Srila Prabhupada wants to destroy the organization, Krishna will see to it. It should be noted that any person that demonizes the authorized Ritvik process is an offender as well, and an accomplice in the crime of unauthorized control, and is therefore a guilty collaborator of direct disobedience to Srila Prabhupada's instructions. So, to get back to the original question, can ISKCON be reformed? Not from within. I don't believe it can be reformed from within. There's no interest in reforming it from within. I've just seen a spreadsheet by one of the sympathizers and supporters of the GBC. He's worth $1.9 million. Or his charity is worth $1.9 million. So he has no interest in changing the status quo. He's making a lot of money off of the situation. All these gurus, they are living comfortably in very opulent situations with servants and all the rest of it. So their material situation is dependent on keeping the status quo going. We're gurus, we're authorized, we're the successors to Krishna. Anyone who questions is a rascal. We got to get rid of that person so we can maintain the status quo. And yeah, they're using a lot of legal tricks and different tricks, and of course they've used violence. They've had dissenters beaten up, taken out. So they put a lot of work into this. This has taken a lot of work. This is a lifetime of work. You know, getting devotees banned, beaten, molested, sued, assassinated, and getting away with it is a lot of work. Let's face it. So they've put their life work into this whole situation. There's no incentive for them to give it up. And a friend of mine, Mahashringa, he went to meet with some GBC, and he says, don't you know that everybody hates your effing guts? And they're all praying for you to die? And they said, yeah, sure, we know that. But what are we going to do now? You know, we're not going to go drive a taxi. This is our livelihood. This is our business. This is what we got to do. We have no other source of revenue or, you know, maintaining ourselves. So they become economically dependent on this situation. And so they have to maintain it. And they will. But there is a reform going on externally. And so I have a lot of faith in the external reform. I think Prabhupada's instructions are very clear. His books are very clear. And they're clearly not following Prabhupada, and that's becoming evident to a lot of people. And so there's sort of a grassroots, independent following of Prabhupada going on, very, very separate from ISKCON. And, you know, ISKCON can't monitor itself, obviously. So they're being monitored by outside people. Outside people are reviewing what they're doing and saying and all the rest of it. And so there is a kind of a pressure being put on the institution. And that will eventually reshape the institution gradually. This has also happened in other religions. You know, there was an external reform, and gradually the institution had to adopt some of the principles and ideas of the external reformers. So this is going to take a long time, though. The rapid response will come from outside reformers, and gradually it will be incorporated into the institution over time. That is to say, if there's anything left of the institution over time. I mean, Prabhupada did say the institution could be finished. And it might be. It might just go into the hands of people who really have no interest of Prabhupada's instructions, and it could just deteriorate and dwindle, and a whole separate new ISKCON will have to be developed on a totally independent basis, separate from the entire former or ex-ISKCON. Now I also wanted to mention that there are partial reforms or incomplete reforms or reforms that are really just another version of ISKCON. For example, KrishnaCon and the IRM. The IRM was opposed to me challenging the GBC over the child molesting. We must allow the child molesting to continue. What's the problem? Children are committing suicide. Children are feeling, PTSD symptoms. What's the problem? Why are you even complaining about that? We should allow that. Well, okay, that's what the GBC wanted. And, we stopped the suicides. We had hundreds of kids pulled out of GBC schools, and we should not have done that. We should have just allowed. There's always collateral damage, that's being allowed by different parties, the GBC or some of the reformers. And KrishnaCon objected to us suing the GBC over the book changes. What's the problem? He was going to make a deal with them. No deal was ever made. We had to sue them, and we alerted people to the changed books issue, which is an important part of keeping the original Prabhupada movement. You need the original books. And he really objected when we brought out the poison issue. We can't do that because then we're going to lose our buildings. So their buildings are his buildings. So this was an incomplete reform. And then we have people like Kailash Chandra. Kailash Chandra is still quoting Kirtanananda and Kirtanananda's Berkeley followers, that me and Sulochan were sahajas and drunks, and we were watching TV, and we were deviants. And he's quoting Hari Sori's diary, saying that we are sahajas. Okay, and Sulochan said, that's making me a target, and that's going to make me get terminated. And he was terminated. So it's amazing that these Kailash Chandra people are trying to revive the old complaints being made by Kirtanananda against me and Sulochan. We can't make a reform by reviving the old, deviants from the past. Kirtananda is a deviant. We shouldn't be quoting Kirtananda and his followers. We shouldn't be quoting Hari Sori, who is a big follower of Bhavananda. So if you notice what's happening here, they're trying to justify the taking out of Sulochan. That's what Sulochan's own mother said. They're trying to justify taking out her son by complaining that we are sahajas and all the rest of it. So notice what's happening here. They're defending two groups which we have identified as pedophile guru programs. Kirtananda was a pedophile guru program. Bhavananda was a pedophile guru program. We shouldn't be reviving these programs at this point in time. It's just ridiculous. In addition to, Sulochan said, these claims against us are making us targets. And Kailash also wants to have conditioned souls worshipped as gurus. He keeps saying we need a Madhyam guru that Prabhupada says can fall down and become a demon, an asura. We need to worship people who can fall down. Well, that's what the GBC says. So we're quoting Kirtananda, we're quoting Bhavananda, and we're quoting the whole main theme of the GBC, that conditioned souls can be acharyas. So this is not a reform. The reform means we go back to square one. Worship the pure devotee. We don't worship conditioned souls. And we read the original books of the original spiritual master of ISKCON. That's the proper way to revive ISKCON. But there's many other reformers, quote-unquote reformers, who have an incomplete idea of how to make a reform. But anyway, we feel that the original reform, bringing things back to Prabhupada standard, will eventually happen. It is happening. More and more people are taking interest in the original books, the original instructions, and in worshiping Prabhupada as the Acharya. So these are the real components of the real reform, and it's gradually happening more and more. So we have more people writing to us, making good inquiries, asking good questions, and saying, yeah, we're on board. We want to just worship the pure devotee. So it will happen by one means or another. It will happen internally, externally, or both. And, we'll see a revival of Prabhupada and his teachings eventually. It will just surface gradually. And a friend of mine, his name is JD, he said the ISKCON GBC is like a sinking Titanic, and he just can't wait for them to be at the bottom of the ocean. So I think that's the opinion of more and more people. The GBC are just old, out-of-touch zombies, and they don't get it. They created a mess out of ISKCON, and everyone knows that. The public knows that. The devotees know that. All the different sanghas know that. And their system is just going to go down. And the Prabhupada revival will happen, is happening, and it's just a question of time. Can it be done in ISKCON or out of ISKCON? That's not really going to be the issue over the long haul. It's just going to happen spontaneously, both in and out of ISKCON, because it'll be an individual situation. Individuals in and out of ISKCON will accept the original teachings, and it will come back to that standard. So I hope this helps. Hari Hari Bol.